Hello and welcome to another Python lesson from Programming to Success. Today we'll be looking at loops in Python. We will be covering for loops, while loops, nested loops, and infinite loops. Let's start off with a quick review of what we learned in our last two videos. We learned how to use input statements to get the user to type in something back to us. We also learned how to use if, else, and elif statements. Using this in our last video, we wrote our first actual program, which was making a quiz in Python. Now, without further ado, let's get on with today's lesson. Chapter 1. For loops. Well, what if you want to repeat a piece of code again and again? Do programmers do this by writing the same code again and again? The answer is no, at least if you want to finish your code sometime in the next decade. For repeating a chunk of code multiple times, programmers use loops. The first type of loop that we will be discussing is the for loop. We use for loops when we specifically know how many times we want a piece of code to repeat. So, let's say we want to print out hi on the shell 10 times. We would use a for loop because we know that the code has to be repeated 10 times. This is how we would use a for loop to do so. We would say for x in range 0, 10, print hello. We use the range function to list the numbers from the two values we specify so that the code goes in that amount of times. So in this case, we specify 0, 10. Python will list the numbers 0 to 9. When we say 0, 10 or one number, another number, the first number is included, but the second number is excluded in that list. So 0 to 9, that's 10 numbers, and x will increase every single time. It'll start off at 0. So this will be true for a total of 10 times. So Python will go inside this for loop 10 times, and hello will be printed out 10 times. So let's try typing this in an IDLE file. We can say for x in range, we use the range function, 0, 10. In this case, we want the code to repeat 10 times, so we say 0, 10. X is just the variable that we are using. You can have whatever you want there. So the numbers will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 10 numbers again. So Python will go inside the loop for a total of 10 times. And the code inside of the loop will be executed 10 times. So if we run this code, we'll get hello printed out 10 times. Because Python looped the same code again and again for a total of 10 times because of the numbers we specified here. If we say 0, 5, hello will be printed out only 5 times. So the amount of times the code gets executed is based on the numbers you specify. Continuing with for loops. In this case, when we use the range function, Python will only return the iterator, not the numbers from 0 to 10. However, if we want the numbers to be printed out so you guys can understand this a little better, we can say print list range 0, 10. We use the list function when we want the actual numbers to be printed out. So if we run our code, we'll get the numbers 0 to 9 printed out. As you can see, 10 is excluded, 0 is included. This will be a total of 10 numbers. So if we have this in a loop, Python will go inside of the loop 10 times. More with for loops. We can also use for loops to print out items in a list. We learned earlier in one of our previous videos, to print out specific items in a list, we can say print the name of the list and the index position inside of square brackets. Well, we could do this much faster with a for loop. We could just say for x inside of our name of the list, print x. So let's try this out. Let's first create a list. We can call it numbers equal to, and then square brackets for lists, or numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, if we want all these items to get printed out, we could say, using a for loop, we could say for x in and then the name of our list. In this case, the name of our list is numbers. So we would say for x in numbers, print x. So if we run our code, Python will first see the first item, and then that item will be stored inside of x, and then that item will be printed out. Similarly, for the next item, it'll be stored inside of x and printed out, and it'll go on and on like that until it reaches the end of the list. So we print out, we'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the numbers in the list were given right back to us. Nested for loop. As you probably know, nested for loop means to have a for loop inside of another for loop. However, for each for loop, we need to have a different counting variable. Counting variables, for example, x over here, are just variables that we use to count the amount of times we loop inside of Python. So in this case, x is a counting variable and I is a counting variable. We have to use two different counting variables. So this is an example of a nesting for loop. We can say for x in range 0, 5, and then indent our code, print hello, and then we start our next for loop, for I in range 0, 1, and then this code also needs to be indented, print world. Indentations in Python are very important. It shows whether something is a part of something or not. So if this print hello is not indented, Python wouldn't know that it's a part of this loop. So when we run this code, Python will first see the first for loop and go inside of it and print hello. Then Python will enter the next for loop and print out world once, only once, because of the numbers we specify here. Then Python will go back up to here. We have to do it a total of 5 times. We only did it once. So Python will do the same thing again. It'll print out hello, go inside the second loop, print out world. It'll come back up, do hello, second loop, world. It'll do this a total of 5 times because of the number we specified in the first for loop. And world will only be printed out once each time because of the numbers we specified here. So let's try typing this in our file. We can say for x in range 0, 5, print hello. And then our next for loop still has to stay indented for I in range 0, 1. And then the code is automatically indented for us because Python knows that code inside of a for loop has to be indented. And then we can say print world. So if we run this code now, hello world, hello world, hello world, hello world, hello world, a total of 5 times because Python went into the first loop, print out hello, and then the second loop world, and did this a total of 5 times to get this output. Well, that will be it for chapter 1 for loops, and let's get on with the next chapter. Now we'll get on with chapter 2 of today's lesson. Chapter 2, while loops. Like we learned earlier, in Python, we use for loops when we know how many times we want a chunk of code to repeat. However, we use while loops for the exact opposite, when we do not know how many times we want a chunk of code to repeat. This is how we create a while loop. We say while, and then in parentheses a Boolean expression, an expression that has to be true or false, and then a colon, and in the next line our code. It has to be indented. Remember, indentations are very important in Python. So in this case, Python will evaluate this Boolean expression. And as long as this Boolean expression is true, Python will keep going inside the while loop and executing this code again and again. You don't need to know how many times you want the code to be executed like for loops. It just keeps going in as long as this Boolean expression is true. However, if the Boolean expression is ever false, Python will leave the while loop and just exit the whole structure. Creating while loops. Now we will make our first while loop. How about we make a variable called number and store the number 0 inside of it? As long as the number is less than 5, we can have Python print out true. However, if the Boolean expression is ever false, let's have Python print out false. Note that each time Python goes inside of the while loop, we will need to update the value stored inside of the number, or else we will be left with an infinite loop. In this case, we'll have to add 1 to number every time Python goes inside the while loop, or else number will stay with the value 0, and 0 will always be less than 5. So it'll just keep looping, and it'll be an infinite loop. You will get true printed out infinitely many times. So in this case, Python will first store 0 inside of number. Then Python will see the word while, so it'll evaluate this Boolean expression. Is 0 less than 5? Yes. So Python will go inside of the while loop and print out true. Then, using an increment statement like we learned earlier, Python will add 1 to number, so number will now be 1. And then it'll go back up to this while loop. 1 is less than 5. Is that true? Yes. So again, true will be printed out, and number 1 will be added to number, so number is now 2. This will keep going on. When number is 4, Python will print out true, and then add 1 to number. It'll be 5. 5 is less than 5. Is that true? That is false. So Python will leave the while loop and print out false. So let's just try this out in an IDLE file. We can say number is equal to 0, and then while number is less than 5, and then a colon. Python automatically indents it for us. Print true. And then we have to update number, or else it'll be an infinite loop. So we can add 1 to number using an increment statement. Number plus or equal to 1. This is the same thing as writing number equals to number plus 1. It's just a simpler way to write it. And then we can say outside of the while loop, we take out the indentation because this has to be outside of the while loop, false. So indentations show whether something's part of something or not, like we learned earlier. These two statements are indented, so they are considered to be a part of the while loop. So, and this one is not indented, so it's separate from the while loop. Now if we run this code, we'll get true, 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 false. True 5 times and false once, which is what we were expecting. 0 will be, the condition will be true when number is 0, so you'll get true once. When it's 1, it'll still be true. So another true will be printed out. And when it's 2, you'll get another true. 3, another true. 4, another true. That's a total of 5 trues. However, when it's 5, this condition will be false. So Python will leave this while loop and print out false, which is why we get 5 trues and 1 false. Nesting while loops. Just like for loops, while loops can also be nested. So this is an example of a nesting while loop. We can say number equals to 0. And then while number is less than 2, print high. So as long as this Boolean expression is true, Python will go inside of this while loop and print out high. Then we create a different variable called number2. Number2 equals to 0. So we're storing 0 inside of number2. Then we go into the next while loop. Is 0 less than 1? True. So Python will go inside here and print by. Then 1 more will be added to number 2. So it'll go back up to this while loop. Is 1 less than 1? False. So Python will add 1 more to number. So in this case, right now number is 0. When we add 1 more, it'll be 1. So it'll go back up to the first while loop 1 more time. You'll get 1 is less than 2. It's true. So Python will print out high, and number 2 will again be stored as 0. It'll be reset. Then we go inside of this while loop. Number 2 is less than 1. 0 is less than 1. True, because we reset number 2. And then it'll print out by. Add 1 more to number. It'll fail this condition because 1 is not less than 1. And then it'll come here, add 1 more to number, and you'll get 2 is less than 2 when it comes back up to this while loop. That's false. So in the end, you will just get high by printed out back to you. So let's try typing this out in our file. We can say while number is less than 2, print high, and then we have to create a new variable number 2 and set that equal to 0, or we're storing 0 instead of number 2, and then a new while loop, while number 2 is less than 1, we'll print out by. Then number 2 plus or equal to 1, or we're adding 1 to number 2, and then we add 1 more to number, because we need to update these values or else we'll have an infinite loop. So if we run our code right now, sorry, and then hi bye will be printed out twice. This is because the first time number is less than 2, 0 is less than 2, so hi will be printed out, and then number 2 is 0. Is 0 less than 1? True. So bye will be printed out, then we add 1 to number 2, it'll come back here. Is 1 less than 1? False. So it'll leave this while the second while loop and go here and add 1 to number. Is 1 less than 2? True. So it'll do the same thing again. So we'll get 2 of these. However, the third time we add 1 to number and we'll be left with 2 is less than 2. That's false. So it'll just be hi bye printed out twice. Infinite while loops. We can also create while loops that run infinitely many times. So this is one way we can create an infinite while loop. We can say while, and then instead of a Boolean expression, we can use this Boolean value true, and then inside of it print hi. But this is because we use true, so this Boolean value will always be read as true. True is just replaced with the Boolean expression. So it'll always be considered as true when Python comes here, so it'll just be an infinite loop. This is because we use the Boolean value true here. So let's try typing this out. We can say while true, and then print hi. Now if we run this code, hi will be printed out infinitely many times. It'll just keep going, as you can see. This is because of the Boolean value we used here instead of the Boolean expression. So Python will always read this to be true. It'll just be an infinite loop. Break statements. We use break statements if we want a piece of code to just stop running completely. How about we create an infinite loop and we ask the user if they're tired or not while they are on a hike. If they are not tired, we will print out keep walking. If they are tired, we will just say break and the code will be stopped. So first, we can start off by saying print let's go on a hike. And then in the next line, we can create our infinite while loop. While true, and then the conditions we want. And we can first create an input statement because we want the user to be able to respond. We can say answer equals to input, and then are you tired yet? And then y/n. This is basically saying, are you tired yet? Answer with a yes or no. And then we can say if answer equal to y, it has to be in quotes because y is a string, then we can print out break because the user is tired, so we just break the code. Else, and then we can say elif answer equal to n or no, we would say print keep walking. So if the user keeps answering no, it'll just keep asking them the same question again and again. Because this is an infinite loop, it'll never stop. However, if we say why or yes, because we are tired, then the code will just break and nothing will be asked to us. So if we run this code, it'll first say, let's go on a hike. Are you tired yet? If we say no, it'll say keep walking and ask us again. If we say no again, keep walking, ask us again. This will just keep happening. However, if we ever say yes, the code will just break. This is because of the break statement we used right over here. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you learned a lot. Stay tuned for the next video that will be coming soon. Please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. And if you have any questions, please let me know down below in the comments. Again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.